and she tells this story. Evidently, shepherding is still very alive and well in the state of Texas. And Tom is a shepherd who takes care of the family's sheep there. She said that he never leaves them, or he doesn't even go to the movies or go out to dinner. He doesn't even go to church. She thought, well, maybe he holds services for the sheep, but she didn't know whether or not he really did that. Someone once told Tom that God created sheep in order to make chickens look smart. But Tom didn't laugh. While he knows that sheep are not smart enough for a game of fetch or a frisbee toss, nevertheless, she said, sheep can generally figure out where food and water are, and that's pretty smart. On the other hand, if Tom does not keep them moving, the sheep will overgraze on one place. So Tom and Shep stay with the sheep every day, leading them to greener pastures. In order to encourage the sheep not to overgraze, but to move on to the other pastures, Tom cannot go on charging out in front of the sheep, shouting orders to them. Here sheep, this way sheep. They would probably just turn and go in the opposite direction. Therefore, Tom does not usually shout to his sheep about anything. She says sometimes Tom talks aloud to himself and the sheep probably overhear. Sometimes he may speak to them in the same way we speak to babies, never really expecting them to understand. And sometimes, she said, he sings to them because he likes to sing. And because the sheep do not seem to be disturbed by his singing, but I've never heard Tom, she says, raise his voice to his sheep. I've never heard him be angry or disparaging about his sheep. And so they follow him, not because of his authoritative directions, but because they trust his voice. While his sheep could probably not distinguish Tom's face from that of any other shepherd, that does not mean that they are stupid. The truth is they seldom see Tom's face, for Tom is not usually out in front of them, but rather behind them. They know Tom's voice and are reassured as he sings along behind them, encouraging those who are struggling, assisting those who are injured or sick, directing those who cannot find food, helping the unfortunate, the halt, the lame. The sheep have good instincts and with a good shepherd are able to manage very well, but they need someone to watch over them and lead them to green pastures. They have to trust their shepherd as Tom is with them every day and they know his voice and he leads them from behind. She says, I doubt seriously, however, that the sheep are aware of how Tom works to keep them from danger. Tom transforms the wilderness into security and safety for them, guiding them around danger to green grass and cool water. Tom will not permit the wolves and the coyotes of the hill country to be a threat to his sheep. He defends them from predators. Tom is always on the lookout because sheep are such vulnerable creatures. Of course, on occasion when Tom has been ill or had a family emergency, he's had to have someone with him to look after the sheep, to hire someone. But hired hands want time off, and at the slightest danger, hired hands will abandon the sheep and run. A shepherd, on the other hand, will put his own life at risk in order to protect his sheep. Tom has in fact sustained wounds from wild animals he's had to fight off from his sheep. And the sheep seem to know that the hired hands value their own safety more than the lives of the sheep. Tom has noticed that the sheep are often jumping when he brings in a hired hand. They know the difference between a shepherd and a hired hand, and that is why Tom seldom trusts the sheep to a hired hand. And that is why day after day, over rocks and crevices, through shadows and storms, Tom is with the sheep. They know his voice, and Tom leads them through, most of the time, from behind. this story, it is easy for us to identify ourselves as the sheep and the shepherd as a prized figure who tends to our needs, like a shepherd who sings to his sheep just because he likes singing, like a shepherd who leads us to greener pastures and cool waters because we tend to get stuck in the same places, fearing the unknown pastures. Maybe Jesus, unlike the rest of us, can appreciate the beauty of a 47-year-old frumpy, gray-haired woman before she even opens her mouth. Maybe Jesus knows that even though we are not all newborn babies like Colin, we are still just as vulnerable when it comes to our faith. And he continues to guide us, laying down his life at the gate to keep us ever with him. We may not see him, but that does not mean that he is not guiding us. Perhaps he too is guiding us from behind, like good shepherds do, catching those who fall away from the fold, mending and healing the hurt and the afflicted, seeking out the lost and returning them to their rightful place. Jesus as the Good Shepherd is a startling image, and we are invited into that image as imitators of good shepherding. We are invited into this sheepfold as participants in this body of the Good Shepherd, so that we may learn this art of shepherding, tending, feeding, and leading others. Maybe God continues providing green pasture. May he continue leading us to green pastures for us to reside, leading us to cool waters, restoring our souls, walking with us through death's dark valleys, and preparing a table before us even in the presence of our enemies. For God is with us, comforting us all the days of our lives, until that day when we shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Let's take a moment.